Hey guys, Dan Kai, coach of Wise Action Pods, and welcome back to another episode of Trade Mode. Heading into round 12, and the buys are officially upon us now. And it's an exciting time as we've got an additional trade each and every week for the next 5 weeks, which is definitely something new for a lot of coaches. And we also got best 18 as well. So for teams like mine, where we are struggling with not having too many rookies in the first place, a best 18 is definitely appreciated for the next couple of weeks. So, yeah, but an exciting time. And I think I wanted to start this video off a little bit around the buy strategy. I think I've gone on probably for the last 4 weeks, plenty about your buy structures and setups like that. So I won't touch on that too much this week. But I really just wanted to say that it is extremely team dependent now when we get into these buys, because every team's different depending on who you have, how many premiums you have out this week, how many green dots you have, how many players that you are relying on this week, how many you feel comfortable with. So I try and I'll try and go through a few scenarios that sort of make sense for different teams that I think are pretty popular. And I guess I'll start off the top here is that I think most teams are in this position where you probably have about 15 players that you're pretty comfortable fielding this week. And this is, and you probably have about 4 or if not 5 premiums on the buy. So this is where coaches are starting to get a bit creative this week, where they're looking at these mid prices, because 15 players prior to trades, you're not going to be able to get up to this ideal 18 players that you really want to maximize your scoring this week. You're going to, one way or the other, you're going to be relying on a rookie. It's really just who that rookie is, whether it's maybe you're looking at a Bias or a Lindsay. If you're holding a trainer, I wouldn't recommend it, but he's definitely there. But besides that, we've actually lost a fair few of those guys that we've been relying on for the last little bit. Reed went down with an injury, Trainer went forward, and potentially he's going to be dropped, if not be sub. And then also Lawler was the other one who went down with an injury and is out for a period of time as well. So these rookies that we've relied on for the best part of the start of the season have unfortunately left our team now, or need to be traded out this week. So we're really struggling to have these good rookies that we're comfortable with relying on, that probably that have the opportunity to drop like a 40 or even a 30 on our head this week, which obviously is not ideal in our scoring field. So this is where I feel like a lot of people are at. And where I sort of recommend, what I would recommend this week is if you can either jump off one of the premiums, if you have maybe a Daniel or a Chera, for example, you probably want to look at jumping off one of them. And that's able to get you up to a decent player by sidewaysing them to someone else, maybe like a Holmes. It's probably only, I think, actually save money going from a Chera to a Holmes. Not advocating the trade out Chera, because he has been very good and is close enough to the top 8 midfielders. But just for an example, if you are in a bit of a struggling spot like this, where you've only got 15 players that you're comfortable with prior to trades, then it is an opportunity for you. I'd probably recommend Caleb Daniel before that, but just as an example. But besides that, you're probably just doing the regular 1 up, 1 down scenario. So for Trainer and Reed, for example, a lot of people are trading that this week. It's simply going Trainer, Reed up, and then Trainer down, right? And we obviously have a great downgrade option, which I will talk about soon. But yeah, he's obviously one that we highly need to target. And that sort of gets you to 17 comfortable players that you're going to be at. So that would be ideal. And I think then you're only relying on that one of those rookies that you have to field, which again would probably be a Bias or a Lindsay, right? You can rely on one of them having a bad week, and then you're pretty comfortable. So that's probably the ideal situation to want to be in this sort of spot. Ideally, like I said, you probably want to have 18 comfortable players, but I think that's probably more for the top 1,000, if not top 100 coaches that have had massive sort of cash generations and are probably a primo ahead of everybody. But for teams like mine, I'm in this sort of spot where I'm not able to get the best 18 possible. So yeah, that's definitely just one scenario that I think suits a lot of people. Obviously, if I'm speaking to the coaches that are sort of a bit above that, you've probably got 16, if not 17 players that you're comfortable prior to trades. Then you probably could look at just doing a rookie downgrade, right? Like, not saying a full rookie down, but you probably look at trading 3 rookies out, able to get 1 premium, and probably not even have to worry about playing around with this mid-priced option that a lot of people are looking at this week to get those sort of to get those better players in, right? If you have 17, getting one premium extra, then get you at 18. I wouldn't worry about a mid-price at all. So that would be simply just going, again, as an example, Reed, Trainer out, and then maybe a Lawler, for example, if you had him, then he can just go down, and then you're banking a bit of coin for next week to make those big upgrades again, because, again, next week we're hunting for premiums, so premiums are off their buy, so that's just a few different examples that I wanted to talk about. So anything outside of that, I think you'll be in a pretty luxurious position that if you already had 18 players you're comfortable with this week, I'd be very skeptical that you've probably are a bit light on with your buys. Maybe you only have 2 premiums on the buy. Then if you're in that position, I'd just be fixing up red dots and just downgrading entirely. Wouldn't even bother searching for a premium unless there's someone that you really want. But besides that, I think your buy structure is probably a bit cooked, and you need to start looking and worrying about that. Why you've probably got these week's trade, so 3 weeks this week, and then obviously 3 trades next week to really fix that up. So I think that sort of covers off all the strategy around what you should be doing this week. But let's get into the trade out targets for this week. I think it's pretty straightforward. I've gone through them already. So I'll bring up my top 5. There's probably no surprises here. Zach Reed and Luke Trainer are number 1 and number 2. Zach Reed's by far number 1 just because he's out for the next, I think, 4 to 6 weeks, the injury report said. But either way, he's out for an extended period of time with that hamstring injury. So that's super unfortunate. Obviously, a lot of people were relying on him through the buys because he's been such a good player and a fantasy scorer for us for all season, realistically, and was looking on track to be one of the best cash generators all season. Obviously, he's gone up 500k, so that's pretty phenomenal, and he was on track to do a lot more than that. So disappointing to see him go, but yeah, huge thanks to him for all he's done for all the fantasy coaches out there. But it is time to go, so here's an easy one to trade out. Huge amount of money in his head. Luke Trainer, very similar. Just that role shift was a very sudden shift that no one sort of expected. So unfortunately, a lot of people did get caught out with that 21 on field last week. And I would not be surprised if he gets dropped. So he's theoretically a red dot, huge break even. So he is one I'd highly recommend trading out as well. That's why he slots in there at number 2. Don't think anyone's disputing that. Number 3, I have gone with red dots just to sort of diversify a little bit, not to be too specific. So, again, very team dependent, as I said. But if you're in this a bit of a more of a luxurious position where you're not having to trade out a Reed Trainer, and then maybe you're jumping off a Caleb Daniel because maybe you're too heavy in this round 12, and you need to get another premium on the field, then trading at red dots would be my next message at number 3, just because, again, you're setting yourself up for the remainder of the buys as well this week, because as soon as next week comes, you're trading players in from round 12, and we may not have the flexibility to be able to jump off these these red dots throughout these rounds anymore. So that's just some strategy around. You want to try and get as many green dots as possible through the next couple of weeks, so that's just the way it has to go. So for me this week, I'm still looking at trading out a Connor Stone. I think his name is Stone either way. So that's I highly recommend if you can jump off one of those guys. I know a lot of people are looking at the likes of Finn O'Sullivan and even a Moraes as well. These guys that are round 12 rookies, and while they do slot in at number 4, I just probably prioritize red dots over them, just because at the end of the day they are beating hearts, and worst case scenario, if you are struggling with numbers down the road, their job security does look pretty okay at the moment. So Sullivan's can't be questioned. He's played all year, even though he hasn't scored particularly well. But I think a 50 is better than a donut, So I'm happy to hold him through, even if that means he's through with me throughout the entire season. Then that's just is what it is, right? He's not really doing anything to harm me, but he's also not doing any good in my team either. So I think just through the bars, I'm happy for him to sit there, and I'd prioritize jumping off a red dot at this stage. So yeah, that's just some strategy around that. Number 5, I did have Caleb Daniel there. Just if you're looking at trading out around 12 player, I highly recommend Caleb Daniel as that number 1. Sorry, at in that order. So yeah, Caleb Daniel. Then if you have a Chero, then he's probably slots there in there as well. I know there's a lot of talks around Harry Sheezel and what his role does to his scoring for the next period of time, but I'm not as worried. Obviously the 81 wasn't great, but looking at the stat line, he still had 8 marks, which is showing that they want the ball in their hands, in his hands, and he's going to get it. So you also got to look at the matchup. Like Collingwood were one off, if not the hardest matchup there was. So I just think it's a one-off bad game. If that's his floor, then I'm absolutely fine with that. So I think he'll be there or thereabouts, still in the top 6. I know the likes of Rosie has gone back there now with that DPP, but I still think he'll be there or thereabouts. So I'm happy to hold him, especially with the run coming up. Like it's not amazing, but obviously the Eagles coming straight out of the bye is obviously a fruitful matchup. Whether he does play half forward, if not half back, who knows? I'm just not saying that he could easily go halfback as soon as next week. There's no consistency with his role, which is frustrating. I do agree. I would rather him be halfback as a fantasy coach, just because he is such a good ball user. But at the end of the day, Alistair Clarkson's going to use him wherever suits to help the team win. Right, they're in this tricky position where they're trying to improve, and they've got a lot of list depth that they can throw the magnets around here and there. So. No surprise to see him half forward again, but do I think it sticks for the rest of the season? I don't think so. No, I think that he'll be thrown wherever is needed. So, and he does float back a fair bit. I just think jumping off of 1 week of poor scores, pretty reactionary. But again, uh, I can see the reasoning behind it, just with the role there. So, I'm not doing it, and I don't recommend other people to do it, but I understand that a fair few coaches will, just trying to get ahead of the pack, and it can be a winning move if it does pay off. So, but I don't recommend it at this stage. Not with a couple of fixtures that are coming up, and we know what Harry Sheezel can do either way. He'll still float back. And looking at his scoring, his splits and scorings last week, he only had one bad quarter. Like I think his lowest quarter was around in the third quarter, he scored 6 points. There was 1 mark and 1 kick. That's all he had all quarter. Whereas all the other quarters, he had solid 20 plus quarters. So it was only the 1 quarter. So if he had that one better quarter, it would have been fine. So I'm not super worried about Harry Sheezel here. So I'm not looking to jump off at all. And the funny thing is as well is that I saw an interesting stat on Twitter, and I probably should remember who said it, but just with the midfielders, just with how badly they are performing this year, that we're probably starting to see the shift where we want more defenders in our team than we want midfielders. So we can start to field more defender midfield premiums in our midfield over the likes of just straight midfielders now. So Harry Sheezel could definitely be part of that group where he is averaging 103. Yes, that may drop with his poor role now, but he's still averaging over inside the top 8 midfielders if you classed him as just a pure midfielder, right? So for all those reasons, I still think Harry Sheezel was there or thereabouts. Whether he's part of the top 8 defenders, you can question, but part of the top 8 midfielders is definitely more achievable in my eyes than defenders at this stage. So I still think he's a very viable option to hold through. That's enough said about that before I go on too long. Just a few more options here. Obviously, I've gone through my top 5 now. People are jumping off Cooper Simpson. I don't mind it. Obviously, unfortunately, that he is now injured and going to be out for an extended period of time. So it's a red dot. So he falls into that category. People that held on to Jack Macrae. I don't know how I feel about this one. Obviously, you've held him through last week, and now he's got one more game he's going to miss. But he is highly likely to return following that. So you're holding him for the next 2 weeks. I don't absolutely hate that. I'd probably, if I was in that position, I'd probably just look at holding him, just because you can probably still get an upgrade this week, unless you're absolutely struggling for numbers and you can't do anything other than that. I'd personally be looking to hold him, because then you can be the first one that's on him. He's going to be part of the top 6 forwards just because of how well he performs. Yes, it's a bit of a bumpy roller coaster, but he's just he is Jack McRae, and we know what the big scores that he can produce when he's in that role. So I'd be personally probably holding him for the remainder of the period of time. Sana Hooley can go. Connor Stone, like I said, I'm the one trading him out this week. So yeah, I highly recommend people to do the same. Jaden Short, he's unfortunately still 1 to 2 weeks away, so he can go. People finally jumping off Riley Sanders, makes sense. He's on his bye, so that's perfectly fine. George Hewitt, this one's a bit of an interesting one. Obviously, was a house on fire for the first 8 weeks of the season, or sorry, 7 weeks there, and has gone pretty shit since, which I can't see a reason why this has occurred. I think it's just a slight dip in performance. Whether there's an underlying injury, just look at the time on ground he had last week. Probably shows you there's a little bit of an underlying something with him at the stage. So I don't mind jumping off him. He's obviously got a huge amount of money on his head and he's dropping like a brick. You could easily sideways him to a pretty decent player in like a Holmes or something like that, who's a pretty massive target for a lot of people this week. So I wouldn't mind jumping off him. Besides that, people jumping off the likes of a Cherry, that seems a bit luxurious. I definitely wouldn't be doing that, especially with the matchup he has against the West Coast Eagles next week. That just makes no sense. He'll be a huge captain option, probably goes massive in that game. So definitely don't recommend that. But besides that, I think everyone's sort of got the right idea, either trading out red dots or trading out around 12 buy players that they're going to improve the numbers. So yeah, I definitely recommend all the trades that people are doing here. So we'll move on from the trade out targets. We'll move into the trade in targets, and I guess I'll start with where we're looking. I'll go defenders first because I think a lot of people are looking at defenders this week, just with a lot of value. But I guess I probably should start with the man that is the number one traded in target this week, and that is the likes of Angus Clark. He is by far the number one trade in target this week, overall even, because just no matter what you're doing with the trade, you're going to have one trade where you're going down to this player because he has by far the best break even. Yes, you're paying a little bit of a bit of a bit of more pricey 291k now that he had that big score. Not expecting that every single week. I understand that, and I highly expect him to drop a potential 30, if not 40, this week even. So I'm not expecting the cash generation to be massive, but you're able to probably ride him for the next 2-3 weeks while they have a lot of injuries, and while his break even is going to be quite lower because of this 98, he hopefully can make 100, if not 150k, if he can continue to drop some decent scores throughout. But I'm not super hopeful. But yeah, he's one you have to pick up. He's pretty much a must-have when you've got these 3 trades. So please grab him this week. If you were looking to do another downgrade target, I probably would recommend going to a... Oops, that is not meant to happen. What's going on here? 230k rookie, and that is probably the likes of a Johnson. I can't actually remember. Is he a defender? No, he's a midfielder. Oops, look him up. Zach Johnson, that's his name, from Essendon. He has some pretty good numbers as for his first year at VFL. I've even got it up here for you. So he has played 6 games so far this year. One's not included because it just happened and obviously it hasn't been updated. But yeah, he's averaging, what does it say here? 94.2. So obviously he got some good numbers. He's playing more of an inside mid winger sort of role in the VFL from what I can tell. From where he's listed and what he's sort of doing, gets a lot of marks, not a huge tackler, so I'm not expecting the same sort of big scores, but the job security is going to be there for him with how decimated the Essendon boys are at this point in time. Just looking at the injury list, I can show you that as well. There's a lot of players that are either out for the season or out for a good 4 to 7 weeks. Just look at the injury list. So the job security is just going to be there for him. So he'll be able to just be someone that can float in our teams throughout the bye period and potentially be one we can cash out towards the end, if not at the end, at round 16. So I think he's definitely one that you can jump on with a pretty safe bet that he's going to be someone that we can get some cash generation from. Whether it's going to be massive or not will be seen. But with the role that we know he's sort of going to be heading into as a halfbacker, I'm pretty sure he's actually named on halfback already. So we know that the scoring potential is going to be there with the Zach Reid sort of hole that he's going to sort of form. So I'd be jumping on him at number 2. And then I've got number 3, Kyle Lohmann. A lot of people are looking at him this week. How do you spell his name? Lohmann. He's not a midfielder. That's why he's not showing up. Now, I'm caught in two minds with this because I agree that, you know, he's obviously super cheap for what he's doing. Like, he's down 262k for the year, and we know how good he can be, but it's just a lack of performance at this stage. You know, he's obviously had the injuries to start the season. Didn't do well, but he hasn't really performed well since returning from injury either. Like, it's been pretty underwhelming. I do expect that if this doesn't improve very shortly, then he is at risk of being subbed out or being the sub. He's named on the bench so far this week, so there's even a potential that he's going to be a sub tomorrow. So I'm not sure I'm 100% confident with this, but if you aren't confident with jumping on, you know, a Johnson without seeing it for a week, then Kyle Lohmann's probably the one I jump on without that. So it's just that elevated price tag. I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that. The break even's not amazing either, but we know Kyle Lohmann can definitely put up a decent score when he hits the scoreboard, which is just something he hasn't done at the moment. He has not kicked the goal all year, so very down on performance and lacking confidence. But he did look pretty good last week, so I can see that sort of starting to turn. So he's my number 3 there. But I will move on from that. Let's get to this back up. Get rid of that. All right, so my number 1 trade-in target for defenders this week has to be Max Holmes. I identified a couple of weeks ago that this is the start of his amazing run, and he already sort of get off to a great start last week with that 117 against Western Bulldogs. So I'm expecting him to go pretty massive for the next period of time, and if not for the remainder of the season. He plays the likes of Richmond twice in the remaining part of the season, and also has a pretty good run for particularly the next 3 weeks. But even after that, you know, Richmond, St Kilda, North, Essendon again, then Richmond. He only probably has 3, if not 4, tough matchups. Like, I wouldn't classify the Lions as a tough matchup, but, you know, Port Adelaide, Sydney, probably, and GWS. 3 tough matchups for the end of the season. So he's definitely one I highly recommend jumping on. Lower price tag, 916k. Priced around that 91, if not 92 sort of areas. I do expect him to be able to go about 100 average from here on out, if not even more than that with that decent run. So he is very underpriced. So jumping on him now is definitely worthwhile. I will just say, look at how you buy the structure up. I know a lot of people are pretty heavy around 16 now with a lot of premiums with, you know, the Essendon boys with Martin, Merritt. Maybe you've got Dunkley in there, Whitfield, Ash, all those sort of guys, and obviously the 2 Geelong boys in Holmes and Smith. There's a lot of good premiums there, and you may come a bit undone when it comes around 16, and you may need to actually trade one of those guys out, which is a tough thing to do. So be careful with that. But I highly recommend getting in Max Holmes if you can this week. Number 2, I have got the likes of Jack Sinclair. And this one's probably more so around the fact that he is still probably 50k cheaper than what he should be, averaging around that 102, 103 sort of areas. I expect him to go out. Good matchup against Melbourne. Obviously, they've been giving a few points to halfbackers for a little while. So, in his last fortnight of form has been pretty amazing, so might as well jump on him now. I will say his run isn't great post the bye, but I think, yeah, he's definitely one that's going to be there or thereabouts, part of the top 6. And he's going to massively improve your buy structure. So he's definitely one that I'm targeting this week, being a bit lighter in that round. So I do recommend if you are a bit lighter. And when I say I'm lighter in the round 13, I mean you probably only got 1. And you probably want 2 ideally, now that we've got no Jack Macrae. 2 is probably the ideal. 3, you're probably pushing it a little bit just because you've probably doubling up in one line or the other sort of scenario. One in defense, one in the midfield is probably about right, in my opinion. So that's where I'm fixing that up. I've got Nasiah, I'll get in Sinclair, and he'll sort of sit in that forward. Sit in the midfield line for me that week. So I highly expect him to go well, and I think he's going to be a good trading target this week. So number 3, and I will, with the next man I'm talking about in Lachie Ash, I've got to welcome him to my top 5 because he has not been part of my top 5 trading targets all year, and he's finally made it to the list because we can't ignore it anymore. Unfortunately, we've always been saying that he's going to turn around and be this 70, 80 averaging player that he was last year, but it's just not happening. He's done it for half the season, so I don't see that changing now on, especially with the signs that the likes of Lachie Whitfield went forward last week. Shows that they're really trusting the likes of Lachie Ash back there. So he may be the main man back there, and he's definitely worth trading in. Obviously, great matchup against Richmond Tigers this week. Could have a pretty massive game. He's not cheap, so that's why I have a few others ahead of him. But I do like that he has a pretty good ceiling as well. He's gone 125 so far this season and got multiple 5 times over 110 as well. So yeah, he's obviously a great target and going to be part of that top 6 for the remainder of the year, as long as nothing changes. So gotta look at him, and I know a lot of people are looking at trading him in. He's up to nearly 14%. That's wild to think that. Yeah, some people started with him. It's been a major pick, Hilux winning pick. I would be surprised to see the person that wins the Hilux this year started with him. So massive props to you. Number 4, I've just gone with a few safety options, and decided I'm going to be lower. It's the buys. So you have a bit of extra money floating around. So this is the time to be able to spend up for these guys that are a bit more pricey. So Nasiah is definitely worthwhile, even though you're probably paying for what you're going to get. He's showing that he has a pretty good ceiling and has a pretty high floor as well. So again, should go pretty well this week. And again, round 13, definitely worthwhile jumping on him. I think he's just quite highly honed in the top, or majority of the coaches that are playing at the moment. I think it's about 25 or 30%. So people are on top of him. The only thing I'll say with him is that he may cop a little bit of attention this week by a Sparrow, potentially. I just feel like that's a pretty good matchup. You know, a half forward playing on a halfbacker definitely could be one that doesn't work out immensely. So be careful with that. But again, he's good for the remainder of the year. Definitely part of the top 6 defenders, if not top sort of 3 at this stage. So worthwhile jumping on. Then number 5, I just slotted in Dane Zorko there. It's again too hard to ignore that what he's been doing for the last sort of 4 or 5 weeks is back to the old Zorko of old. If you picked him up while he was massively cheap, when he had this sort of rough patch through rounds 4 and 6, you would have picked him up just under, I think, $1 million there. So big props if you jumped on him then. I think we all just got a little bit worried that Coleman was going to change anything. So bit unfortunate there, but you got to pay top dollar now, so might as well. And I will say that obviously you either trading him in now or you're not trading him in until after his buy. Obviously, when we're from this point onwards, from next week, we'll be trading into players that are coming off their buy. So we're not going to be targeting any premiums that have later on buys. So you pretty much have to sit and watch him for the next 4 weeks, regardless. So if you can't stand that, then jump on him. But if you can and you're willing to ride it out, then that's definitely something I recommend. So that is my top 5. A few other options I wanted to quickly touch on. Obviously, Kitty Coleman. He was in my top 5 prior to him not playing this week, which is super unfortunate. Really frustrating because I'm obviously an owner. Thought he was going to be good to go this week. He was not on the injury list, so I'm like, oh, he's good to go. Thank God. You know, he's going to be part of my best 15, if not 16 on my field. Put up a good score and continue on his way making money, but unfortunately he's still put up a bit shy. The Thursday night game is a bit unfortunate. That's probably a bit of an oversight for me last week, that I could have probably seen that he wouldn't play a Thursday night game after pulling out last week, but it is what it is. I'm still looking at holding him either way. And yeah, hopefully he returns next week. They did say though that we'll see how he goes next week, if not in 2 weeks' time. So it could even be another week after this. So but I don't think it's as much of a concern next week with obviously 2 teams on the bye. We should have plenty of premiums to be able to put on our field, so I'm not too worried about that. So holding again this week, if not next week. So there's that one for you guys. Where am I at? Obviously, Callum Mills was probably going to be part of some sort of trade in this week, but he's suspended for a week. I just wanted to get that off the top. That yeah, he's obviously someone that we'll keep monitoring over the next couple weeks, but obviously will not be there this week. They didn't challenge it in the end, so he's done for that with that bump. And the final guy that I know a lot of people are looking at is the likes of Tom Stewart. Obviously came back from injury, put up that 92, dropped a bit of more in coin, obviously, with that high break-even. But his break-even's back down to reality now. Priced at about 72, which is ridiculous to think, from a couple of years' time. Even last year when he went massive, to think you could pick him up at a price at 72 is just ridiculous. So, I don't absolutely hate this pick. I just want to see it probably for a few more weeks. Then it's probably worthwhile jumping on, because I do think the days of old are sort of past him. He's not going to be this 100 averaging player off halfback. They have so many weapons back there now, so it's not all going through him. But they do have periods of time where they love to just chip it around a fair bit. So I can see him being underpriced and probably can hit 80, if not 85. But I do think the 90s and 95s are probably out of his range at this point in time. Unless he goes back to that midfield role, which we saw in the first game. So I'm still waiting to see that happen. But this is one I'm willing to let slide to the keeper for another week, and we'll see how this sort of goes for the next period of time. Up against the Eagles this week, I can see definitely going well, if it ever goes into the back line. So, yeah, there's enough on Tom Stewart. If you're in a tough spot and you're looking at picking up a cheaper guy, then he's definitely one that I'd be worthwhile jumping on for sure. That you could ride out through the buys. So there is that. So that's all the guys I really want to talk about. I'll quickly scan through a couple more options here. Nick Martin wasn't in my top 5. I just think he's starting to get a bit too pricey now. Obviously, most people would have jumped on last week, but if you didn't jump on and you got a bit of FOMO, I still like it, but he's probably just a bit behind these other guys. Now, you missed the matchup, you missed the scoring ability. I think it's probably, you could just ride it out for the next period of time and then probably pick him up after his round 16 bye when the run starts to open up again after that. So that's probably where I sit with that one. Sam Banks is an interesting one. I just don't think I'm paying 710k for this sort of player with Jaden Short probably only 2 weeks away. It seems very short term. So I wouldn't be looking at this sort of player this week. Lachie Whitfield, for the same sort of reasons as for Lachie Ash. I'm concerned about what his role is going to be with him moving a bit more forward. The break even is super high, although he probably could hit it very similar to the likes of a Zach Merritt last week. I probably wouldn't be paying that price for him at the moment, with a few poor performances in the last month. So letting that one slide through, and hopefully can pick him up in, say, 4 weeks' time post his buy at under 1 million would be nice, but we'll wait and see what happens there. People jumping on Laird, probably wouldn't be doing that unless you're really struggling. I would rather go to a Tom Stewart, but I think we're getting a bit unique here. I think I should have stopped a little while ago. So I'll move on to the next line, which is, we'll go midfielders. We'll go down the line now. So my number 1 trade-in target, by no surprise, is Zach Merritt off that big 149 last week. Priced at just over $1 million. He's by far probably the cheapest he's going to get all season, so it's definitely worthwhile jumping on him now. I have heard some arguments that he's not the Zach Merritt of old, because he does have, a very roller coaster sort of ride where he's not purely in the midfield all the time. He's not always around the stoppages. He's sort of floating around wherever they sort of need him, and does spend a bit more time forward. So, which is a bit unfortunate, but I still think is definitely part of the top 8 midfielders that we want in our teams. He obviously has a huge ceiling, as we saw, and he's shown that previously so far this season with 3 scores above 130. He's got a couple there below 100, obviously with that 54, probably a bit of an anomaly. He always has sort of one of those games where he just goes absolutely missing, but a couple 80s before that, I'm not too concerned realistically. So I think he's definitely one you can jump on, very safe. The run coming up isn't too bad. You know, a couple of neutral matchups. The Cats very easy. But the other thing I wanted to mention is that potential tags coming his way. You know, Wagner's been doing some underlying roles to the likes of Dacos, so I could see that happening to Merritt as well. Maybe a Mullen. Do they send a Mullen onto him? It's definitely a potential at Geelong there. Probably not seeing it in the next 2 weeks though, so just keeping those in mind that, you know, there could be a bit of a tag targets coming on. So, but I definitely think he's the best midfielder pick up this week. So there is that. Number 2, I did have the likes of Josh Dunkley, just getting even more cheaper than what he has been in the past. Up against Essendon, should be a very fruitful matchup again. He's been a bit down on performance since I traded him in, you know, hasn't really hit a huge amount of ceilings or hasn't been consistent as he has been previously, but I'm hoping for a bit of a bounce back. Hopefully goes 110 plus, so it's probably a very nice trading target. And again, for the same sort of reasons, it's either trade him in now or you're waiting until after his buy to trade him in, which is a long time. So you really got to weigh up who you want to be trading in this week, because yeah, again, we're trading in buy players coming off their buy. So yeah, he's definitely one I'd be worthwhile jumping on this week. Number 3, interesting player. I've got Jye Caldwell. He's getting a bit of talk and is something that I've been monitoring since his injury, obviously. He is someone I'm hugely interested in. He's got a massive points per minute beast. We know he's a tackling machine. And yeah, he's getting it done. Obviously, he had that big score, 120 last week. Looked like he was back to the old self post that injury with a lot of tackles. Would like if he kicked a little bit more, but in time of ground, it is creeping back up to where it should be as well. So, priced at 944k, I just think he can get there or thereabouts for the top 8 midfielders, which is probably a bit controversial. But like I said, with the average of the top 8 midfielders this season is super low, so I probably wouldn't be going there at all this week. Sorry, sorry, lost my train of thought there. He's going to get close enough to the top 8 midfielders. Just if he can get 100 average, then he's definitely someone that you can jump on and at a cheaper price as well. So I like what he can do. He's never going to get tagged because of Zach Merritt, which obviously means if Merritt gets attention, then that means Caldwell can get a bit more of the appeal as well. So yeah, I like him for those reasons. The only downside of these sort of to him is that Parrish is potentially going to return as soon as next week. Obviously spent his game in the VFL last week and is going to be again this week, just with a short turnaround. That would be interesting to see how that sort of affects Caldwell's role. I wouldn't say it's going to affect him in terms of like his where he plays. He's always going to be a midfielder, right? I think he's always going to be that 70-80% midfielder. It's just whether his can he get the ball in his hands as much with the Parrish around, because we know that Parrish can absolutely absorb the ball as well. So that would be the only downside behind Caldwell. But I do think he's going to be a very good option at that price and has a very good ceiling as well, as we know. Tom Green is number 4, and I am slowly fading on this pick as well. Like I said, he's on the brink of top 8. Lower priced, and I just think that's sort of what you're always going to expect with him. He's been pretty poor for the last 2 weeks, besides that 130 put up against the Cats. Obviously, I said with that one, the likes of Bedford was not in the side, so that freed him up to do a bit more of that role where he could take a few more marks around the place and take a few more tackles as well. So I think writing was on the wall that he was going to have a pretty big game. But since then, he's been pretty poor, and that's a little bit surprising because obviously the likes of Callahan has been out with his injury with his shoulder. So I thought it may give him a slight bump, but it just hasn't. So yeah, it's slowly fading in my rankings. I do think he's on the lower end, if not just missing now. But up against Richmond this week, he's going to be there or thereabouts. Price at where he's at, I don't think it's the worst trading that's possible. So if you're looking for a pure midfielder, Tom Green does slot in there at number 4. And then I did have the likes of Jordan Dawson at number 5. Again, it is the buys, so you do have a bit more flexibility with money. So getting up to these $1.1 million players is definitely a possibility. And Jordan Dawson's by far been the number 1 midfielder for the year, and I just think he's probably not one that you want to not have for the next 4 weeks. If you don't have him for the next 3 weeks, then you definitely want to be trading him in for around 16 post his bye. Otherwise, you're not going to get him all season pretty much. So I just think bite the bullet this week. If you can get him, get him. But obviously playing a bit more value, he's down there at number 5. So that is my top 5. A few other options here. I probably should speak about the mid-price options that a lot of people are looking at in the likes of a Sheldrick here. So I'll talk about him first. So Sheldrick, if you watched my team review video on Monday, he was part of my trade plans. Things have sort of shuffled a little bit just with a bit more research and a bit more thought process behind him rather than just bang, here we go. I still love Sheldrick. I think he's obviously I'm a huge believer that he's going to be a massive scorer for us at some stage in his career when he can break into the Sydney side. I was going to be a starter for him at the start of the year. But obviously with a poorer score in round 0, it wasn't worth jumping on him, and obviously I've seen a lot of sub risks. So been a lot of subs throughout. So I do believe that he's going to be a very good scorer, and this is what he just does. When he's in the side, he can hit 80s very consistently. So that was sort of the thought process around picking him. I'm just not 100% sure it's the right time right now to pick him. When we're probably like next week is fine, right? We don't need him for next week, in my opinion. You know, we've probably already got best 18 already set up because we have very minimal premiums on the buy. So not even factoring next week. It's really just this week. You're relying on him for 1 week, and I'm sort of changing my mindset a little bit. Is that if I'm trading in one of these mid-price guys, I probably want to hold them throughout the entire buy round, so all the way through to round 16, and then I can jump off then when we get back to the best 18. Sorry, best 22. If I can have a full team of premiums then, right? So that's sort of my thought process, and I'm just not sure if I see Sheldrick surviving that long. I just don't think his job security is that amazing when you think of all the players that Sydney potentially have coming back. Yes, Callum Mills is out for 1 week this week, so that's a positive sign that he'll again play full time this week. Justin McInerney is also coming back from his suspension, so that's also another player that comes in. You know, we saw Taylor Adams came into the side last week and started as a sub, so that could definitely switch and change every single week. I don't expect him to be the sub every time. So there's just too many concerns there and too many question marks. So I think I'm willing to just let this one slide. I do still recommend it. He's probably on the top end of these guys that I'll talk about, but he's definitely one that's worthwhile looking at that lower price. You'll make money this week and definitely put up a bit of a price if you want to look at a short-term option. He should be fine for the next 2 weeks. I'm just not sure after that point if he's going to be there or not. The next one I've got to talk about is Kane McAuliffe. Now, I've come around to Kane McAuliffe a little bit more. He is 521k, lowest break even of them all with a 3. I just feel like he has the best job security, and I don't think he's going to be the sub just because look at what he's done. He hasn't played all at the start of the season, and he's just instantly come in and gone bang. I'm in this side. I'm in the CBAs at 60% of them, and this is my role now. So he's taken that with all hands, and he's going with it, right? So I feel like he has the best job security in that sense that he's never going to be the sub because I just don't think he's that sort of burst play. He's just more of a workhorse in there. So I like what he's doing. Obviously showing a bit of a ceiling in the last couple of weeks with the 94 and 86. So I do think he can do that again. Yes, tougher matchups coming up, but I don't think that's absolutely a bad thing for him. I think he enjoys a bit more of a contested game where it's tackles. I think that's sort of what his role is, getting these tackles. And we've seen with these mid-prices, tackles definitely leads to pretty big scores. Just look at the likes of Ned Long previously. So I think he can be that sort of mold as well. And he's not even afraid of getting +6s as well. So I think he's definitely my number one for those reasons. Just the job security is there. The scoring output, the price is right. It's the exact same buy, so realistically, it didn't really matter in that sense. But for long term, where this is where the shift has happened, is that I'm looking to hold him through all of the 5 buy rounds. So I'm holding him through to round 16, and then I'll play it by ear after that. So this is where I'm looking this week, and this is where I recommend other people to trade in. If you're looking for a mid price, this is the one. So yeah, there's Kane McAuliffe for you. Sam Berry was another one that a lot of people were looking at, and I won't lie, he did intrigue me for a split second, just with his extremely low price. He's by far the cheapest of the lot, lower break even. It's just the sub risk, man. I can't confidently say that he was part of the best 22 prior to Tex being out of the side due to resting. So I think he could easily go back to being the sub this week, even though the likes of Crouch is out and whatnot. There's so many factors there. I just don't think he's been part of that best 22, and he hasn't been for a very long time. So it's very skeptical to just assume that he's going to be there. Even having talking to some Crows mates, they just don't think it's going to be lasting very long. So I just wouldn't be doing it. And I will say he interested me the most because I like the fact that he has around 15 buy. Just around 15, I'm struggling a little bit to get numbers there. So if I could have held him through to around 15 and then obviously moved him on sort of on then, but that would have been lovely. But I just don't think it's going to last that long, unfortunately. I think he could definitely be the sub pretty shortly, and it only takes one bad performance from him, and then he's on the outer, right? They've got plenty of midfielders that they could throw in there instead. Like I said, Draper is coming through, right? So I just don't think it's worthwhile jumping on him now. He's definitely on the lower end. And then there was the likes of Xavier O'Halloran, which would be the last one I speak on these mid prices. Again, very cheap price as well. Break even of 8. The Richmond Tiger matchup is probably what's intriguing a lot of people, and the forward status, right? The flexibility is nice. It's just the troops are coming back, right? You know, Jake Kelly, he's a test to play this week. This is where my main concern comes from. I think Jake Kelly, we've seen him play a mixture of roles, but with the main troops out, they've always gone to Jake Kelly to be that main guy back in there. So I think Jake Kelly back this week means Xavier O'Halloran goes back forward and then drops these poorer scores like we've seen in the past with 50s, if not 60s, right? So I don't think this is one that I'm particularly looking at, even though it's one that would be able to run through the entire buys. I just don't think it's going to be there for long. So again, I'm just willing to let this one slide through the keeper. So if I had to rank these sort of 4 players of the mid prices, I definitely have McAuliffe number 1 by probably a decent margin. Then I'll go the likes of Sheldrick number 2, just below him. Sam Berry a little bit further down than that as that 3, and then Xavier O'Halloran just at the bottom, just not even considering it realistically. So yeah, that's the mid prices mentioned. Just a few more options here. I guess a lot of people are looking at William Hayes. I know he's highly expected to be. A lot of people are trading him in, but he's not included in my rookies downgrade just because I don't think he holds his spot. I don't see a world where, you know, the Collingwood are bringing in 5 or 6 superstars realistically. So there's no way in hell that this guy's playing. Or he's at the least he's going to be the sub, right? So I don't think it's worthwhile trading in, right? But we all know on Friday night, so that is a positive. Moving down, just looking at pure midfielders. I spoke about Zach Johnson already. Noah Anderson's still a decent option, like I said last week. Obviously has found a bit of form in the last 2 weeks, going 115 plus. Good buy as well, around 14. Definitely is a worthwhile option. Still very cheap, so I don't mind jumping on him. Speak about those sort of guys. Clayton Oliver, I wouldn't be doing it. As good as he was last week, again, I'm just not 100% sure he's one that I'd be jumping on again. Not until I see a bit more consistency. And I think I'll leave it there with that one. We'll quickly move on to the rucks, quickly skimming through these because I don't think this is an area we're shopping in. Again, it's just Royal Marshall at number 1 just for that cheaper price tag. As we all know, he's just ticked over $1 million now. Cherry at number 2, he's getting fairly expensive, but obviously he is on the buy, so I wouldn't, obviously don't go there this week. But yeah. Yeah, and then we'll go number 3, Max Gawn. Surprisingly, nearly 2K coaches are trading him in at his massive price of $1.223 million. That is ridiculous. I couldn't be doing it, but I do expect him to go well again this week. But again, I wouldn't be trading him in. He's got a tough run post his bye. So, yeah, I just don't think it's worthwhile for the next couple of weeks at that extreme price range. But a couple of other options. Obviously, some people did trade in the likes of Luke Jackson last week, and I hope we'll see how it works out for them. It'll be interesting to see if Sean Darcy is back this week and how that affects his scoring against the Suns. I do think Witz is going to be obviously quite restrictive against Luke Jackson this week, so that may not be the most favourable matchup. But yeah, obviously having that Ruck cover this week, so you're able to field him in your Ruck line where Cherry's obviously out, is definitely a nice flexibility. So we'll see how that sort of works out. It's not something that I'd jump on this week, hence why he's not part of my top 5 Rucks. I think the time's sort of been missed for that. You would have jumped on last week. This week's probably a bit too risky for a 1 week play. You're definitely not holding him through the buys because, yeah, he'll start to perform quite badly when Sean Darcy's back, which is expected to be after his bye, right? So, but that is the Rucks there. I will say from the mid-season draft, there was a potential that a Ruck comes in, obviously, for Essendon. We know how bad their stocks are now with Rucks, and they did recruit a mid-season draft in a rookie. In a Ruckman. So we'll stay tuned to see whether that comes true next week. So we'll stay tuned for that one, I guess. And then finishing off just with the forwards, I'll just quickly touch on these guys. I think we pretty much have a lot of these guys, but my number one is Chad Warner. If you didn't pick him up last week, I still think he's a great option. As I've mentioned previously, he has the good round 14 bye, which again we're struggling with numbers. So sorry, round 15, no, round 14 bye, but he's a forward, so we don't have any round 14 bye players. So yeah, I think he's definitely one to jump on. Again, going to be part of that sort of top 6 range. Thereabouts. Had some pretty good form the last 2 weeks. Good matchup coming up next week. So again, considering you won't be able to pick him up next week, you might as well pick him up this week for next week. So keep that in mind. Cheap price, cheap break even, going up a coin. So jumping on him at number 1 is pretty clear. Nick Martin, I already sort of spoke about him. I don't know why I spoke about him in the midfield. In the defenders, he is a forward in my opinion. So yeah, he's still there at number 2. As I've said, for all the reasons that, again, buys, you got money, you can do it. Why not? Rankin is at number 3. I know some people are starting to fall off of him in what he's been doing the last 3 weeks. I still think is in the top 6, even though he's been underwhelming. At the cheaper price of 927k. Good matchup against the Sydney Swans this week. I think he will be fine. Just needs to get a few more marks around the ground and a few more touches. So, yeah. And I will say you probably want either one of Petrarca or Rankin. If you have both, then it's not a problem, but they both have the same buy. Just try and see if you can move one around. But yeah, I definitely want one or the other. So yeah, if you don't have Petrarca, then I'd definitely be grabbing the likes of a Rankin at that cheaper price. This is where I got a little bit spicy with a couple forward options because I'm not super big fans of anyone else you're looking at trading in. I think Petrarca is still a little bit overpriced at this stage for what he is going to potentially do. And I still think, I think I'd rather pick him up post his buy just with the tougher run he's got coming up. So that's just that. So, but I have gone with Brian Myers this week at number 4. I love the matchups he's got coming in the next couple of weeks. He's obviously come back from injury the last 3 weeks and has gone averaging above 100, which is really nice. He does have these purple patches where he does go massive, and obviously he's a great ball user, so they want the ball in his hands whenever they can. So I think you can ride him out through the buys, if not even extend past the buys with a Richmond matchup in round 17. So yeah, definitely worthwhile jumping on him at a super cheap price as well. So I do like that option. Then I've thrown in Toby Green at number 5 as a bit of a sugar hit. Again, another cheaper price guy, 46k. Get a bit of sugar hit this week against Richmond. Someone you can run through the buys just to give you an extra number there. The midfield role looks good on him at the moment and would have gone pretty well last week if he didn't cop a bit of tension from a Wagner there. So yeah, I think he can go well, and we know he can get a pretty big ceiling. He's obviously hitting the scoreboard fairly well, so he's fit and healthy. So he is another option that are definitely worth considering. But that is my top 5 trading targets for the week. I didn't speak about Campbell Gray, but I don't think he's one that I'm particularly looking at. Again, just with the likes of Noel Bolter being back next week, I think Campbell Gray could potentially be losing his role at halfback at least. He could go swing forward, but I don't think that's really worthwhile jumping on because he's probably going to be a 30, if not 40, averaging player forward as well. So I think there's no point jumping on that. So I'm not keen on that. Not keen on Pickett for all the reasons that it's Pickett. He's going to be super inconsistent. And yeah, I just don't see it being continued. And he relies kicking bags to get decent scores. So I just don't think this is what I'm looking at. I think I'll sort of leave it there. But just to finish off, my top 5 targets for the entire round, so just summarizing all of it. So my number 1 by far is obviously the likes of Angus Clark. One way or another, you're trading this guy in. Whether you like it or not, he is by far the number 1 traded in player this week with 33k coaches trading him in. So he is there. I have got the likes of Max Holmes at number 2. Again, huge matchups coming up. His fixture is amazing. Someone that you can just run through the entire buys and for the remainder of the season at a very cheap price. So I like him. And a sugar hit this week against the West Coast Eagles should go very well. So he's number 2. I've got Zach Merritt at number 3. Just with why he's super cheap, you might as well jump on him. He's not going to get much cheaper. So he's number 3. Number 4, Chad Warner. Enough said, realistically. The buy is super nice, as I mentioned. And I've gone with the likes of Jack McRae at number 5. Jack Sinclair at number 5. So that is my top 5 trade-in targets this week. And like I said, I did rank those cheaper mid-price guys before. So what are my trades looking like so far? I haven't changed a huge amount. It's really just going from Sheldrick to a Kane McAuliffe instead. So paying that a little bit amount, but that didn't change my trades at all. So doing the exact same thing. Super unfortunate that I do have Kitty Coleman on the bench, so I have been able to shift things around and get Clark on field and get Boxall on field as well. There was a point in the week where I was looking at just doing another rookie downgrade because I felt like I had comfortable numbers without trading in a mid-pricer, but now that the likes of Kitty Coleman's out, I am struggling a little bit. I'm having to rely on 2 of these two of these rookies, and a Lindsay and a Bias this week, and obviously a McAuliffe. See how he goes. So yeah, we'll see how things sort of play out. The way I like to look at it sometimes like this just helps out. I can't see Ted Closey playing. Coleman's obviously out, and Bias isn't going to be there, so no point putting them on field. But yeah, that's how I'm sort of structuring up this week. But my final thoughts, I guess, I just wanted to quickly say is that stay on your toes this week. Obviously, we've got a few rookies that are playing a little bit earlier, like a Clark, for example. So if he magically pops another 90 again this week, then you're going to be pretty confident that's going to be part of your best 18. So then you could potentially adjust your trades, and maybe you don't need to jump on these mid prices this week where they obviously are a bit risky and potentially can backfire quite quickly. Then you could probably just look at doing another downgrade and just banking a bit of coin for next week, right? So just playing it by ear, being flexible with your trades and being a bit reactionary as we go, because again, it only takes one rookie to have a pop score, and then one of your mid-price guys may not be needed. So keep your ear close to the game. Keep your eyes close to the screen, and yeah, see how we go this week. But hopefully you guys have enjoyed this video. Please leave a like, subscribe, and do all those great things as you always do. Hopefully you have a great weekend. And if you have any questions, drop them below. I'll try my best to answer them before tomorrow night. But if you want a personalized question, go to my QU link below. Otherwise, I'll see you guys in the captain's video tomorrow. Take it easy, guys. Bye.